Hello everyone, welcome back to TTP Sports, and today I'm going to give my seasonal review on the Philadelphia Phillies. It was a big downward spiral for the Phillies. This going in from August to September, it was not fun to watch. I honestly stopped watching them middle of September because I just given up all hope. So, let's get into this because I want to get into the hopes of hopefully next season it's going to be a better turnaround. So, record to finish the season was 80-82. They finished third in the National League East. Remember that they were in first place going into the All-Star break and into August, and look at where they are now, third place. Some leaders, we got average Wilson Ramos, who was a trade deadline pickup. He was our best hitter with an average of .341. So I'm doing that like out of a minimum of 50 games played throughout the season. And then you got Aaron Altherr, who played over 100 games, even though he was sent down to Lehigh Valley. He had an average of 181, which was the worst average on the team out of that span of 50 games. Well, minimum of 50 games, actually. Home run leaders were Rhys Hoskins. He had a great home run season with 34. Santana picked him up in the free agency. He had 24. Franco and Herrera, they both had 22. So those were the top 4 home run leaders on our team. RBIs, Rhys Hoskins had a great RBI season with 96. Santana drove in 86 runs, and Odubel Herrera drove in 71 runs. And then, this is sort of a bright spot and a bad spot for the Phillies, is their starting pitching. So we got Aaron Nola, who had a great season this year, a really standout season by Major League standards. He probably will be a Cy Young candidate, but he's not going to win it because of Jacob deGrom, his historical season. So Nola went 17-6. He had a 2.37 ERA with 224 strikeouts. It was a great season by Nola. Yeah, during the end of the stretch, he was starting to allow more home runs, but he was still Aaron Nola. Hopefully he goes into the next season building off this and becomes even better. Then you got Zach Eflin, who was called up, not mid-season, I would say, like early to mid-season. When he was called up then, he looked really good. But then, like, after we had to fix the rosters a little bit, he was sent down for a week and then called back up just to have his start. He didn't look the same after that. He went 11-8 with a 4.36 ERA with 123 strikeouts. Eflin had a really good start to the season, and then closing out the season was not really good. Jake Arrieta was a big offseason pickup for the Phillies. It wasn't like until near the end of free agency when we eventually signed him to that 3-year deal. So Arrieta had an up and down year. Like, I wasn't expecting him to be that Cy Young type pitcher that he was when he was traded to the Cubs in 2015, but I at least expected him to be above average pitcher. He went 10-11, a 3.96 ERA with 138 strikeouts. Arrieta, I wouldn't say he had a bad season. It was a bad season by his standards probably, but it was an okay season for him. He had his ups and he had his downs. Like, his downs really started when he called out the Phillies and Gabe Kapler in that series against the Giants for the bad defensive plays, and I feel like, this is just me saying this, but I feel like he would go out every start having to think, I have to be the best pitcher possible in order to win these games, and he's trying to be this perfect pitcher, and he has a fear of the defense behind him making a mistake and going to lose this game. So I have to go out there, I gotta strike all these people out, I can't trust the defense behind me, I gotta be the perfect pitcher possible. So yeah, it was an okay season for Marietta. Hopefully next year he can rebound off that and just become a slightly more decent pitcher. Then we got Vince Velasquez. It was below average season for him. He was off and on, mostly off. He had a 9-12 record, a 4.85 ERA, 161 strikeouts. He's mainly a strikeout pitcher. Velasquez, his fastball is really good, but that was the really only thing consistent from him. Like, his other two, I'm not sure what his other two pitches are, but his fastball is his best. And when he utilizes that fastball really good, he can get people out. But it's his other pitches that he can't command or just control. And then we got the worst pitcher on our staff is Nick Pivetta. Pivetta, starting the season, he was actually pretty decent. And then going into, I think it was a Sunday game against the Washington Nationals on ESPN. It was a rain delay. He was pitching good at the beginning of that game, but once the rain delay came, he started to struggle. And then after that game, he wasn't the same pitcher. Pivetta, like Velasquez, is a strikeout pitcher. He relies on the strikeout to get outs. His best pitch is his curveball, and sometimes he struggles to use that curveball a lot. There are some games where he just won't use it because he doesn't feel like he has the proper control of that curveball. So the two low blows on that pitching staff is Velasquez and Pivetta, which I still believe Velasquez has more of potential than Pivetta to be a good starter. Now we go into records before the All-Star break, before that deadline. The Phillies were a really good baseball team. They were exceeding expectations. They were winning games they had to. They were scoring the runs when they had to. Like big runs, I mean. And then the pitching was really carrying them through that whole beginning to the All-Star break. It was fun baseball to watch, but then once we got to after the All-Star break, it wasn't directly after, it was going into August on a road trip to Arizona and San Diego, where it all fell apart. It was after July, the Phillies were still winning series. It was the beginning of August. The Phillies come off of a sweep from the Phillies come off, they sweep the Marlins actually, and then they go into Arizona and San Diego, and they just looked horrible. And I don't know what happened to the Phillies after that series, but they were not able to gain any kind of momentum going in down the stretch. The Phillies, since that All-Star break, they went 27-40. Mind you, right before the All-Star break, the Phillies were in first place. They were a half game above the Braves. And then, since the All-Star break, they dropped to third place. They let the Nationals climb up, and they let the Braves just take control of that division. And then, since that August 6th, that series against the Diamondbacks, the Phillies went 17-34. They went a while without winning a series. It was that bad. It was our hitting, it was our pitching. Sometimes our hitting was good, sometimes our pitching was good, sometimes they were just both bad together. It was never both. It was either one or the other, or both were bad. Our bullpen was blowing saves. Our hitting just couldn't score runs. We were straining people on base. Our starting pitching couldn't go past 3 innings. Mind you, that's Gabe Kapler using his analytics, taking the pitcher out so early, which I'll get into Gabe Kapler a little later. My opinion of Gabe Kapler, by the way, not good. I was a bit optimistic about him when he got signed, but it kind of, as the season went on to the finish of the season, my opinion really lowered on Kapler. And then, before we get into Kapler, actually, bright spots from the season: Aaron Nola. As you said, he had a Cy Young type season, but he's not going to win the Cy Young. He had his first All-Star game selection. And then we got Rhys Hoskins. He had a career high in home runs and RBIs, and he was invited to participate in the home run derby. I think he got knocked down in the second round to, I forget honestly who we got knocked out to, but yeah. And then now we're going to get into my favorite person in the world is Gabe Kapler. Phillies fans are very optimistic of Gabe Kapler when they first signed him in November of last year, going into the free agency market. A lot of fans were criticizing him about his use of analytics, and then that was very evident going into the beginning of the season. That first game against the Braves where Aaron Nola was dominating, he decided to take Aaron Nola out in the 6th inning, and that just, I was questioning that move from the start. Everyone was. Why would you take out a pitcher who was clearly dominating and then bring in the bullpen that lets the Braves win the game? If Nola was at least went 7 or 8 innings, the Phillies probably would have won that game opening night. But then Gabe Kapler, he stuck to his tactics through the whole season. He used analytics for literally every single detail of the game. He used it for the batting, he used it for the pitching, he used it for the outfield, he used it for pinch hitters, pitch runners, literally every situation you could think possible. He used analytics to determine what would happen. So you would say you got Rhys Hoskins, he's coming up. He's batting 2 for 3 that game. But the analytics say he doesn't do quite well against this certain type of pitcher. Let's pinch hit for him. Let's bring in someone off the bench that can probably hit him. And that pinch hitter strikes out. So that was a bad move for Gabe Kapler, and Rhys Hoskins would be out of the game for the rest of the game. My criticism of Gabe Kapler, he has to stop relying on analytics for literally everything. analytics is good for baseball. It's not good for when you use it for every single detail. And everyone probably would agree with me on that one, that he uses analytics way too much. A lot of people want him fired, but the front office, they're all in on him. They're all in on his coaching staff. Clintack, they're all in that analytics movement. But they're all here to stay. But I would rather Kapler adjust to not rely on analytics so much. Like, you need to have that gut feeling when, like gut feeling, meaning, I think this guy, analytics say this guy is better at this moment, but this guy has been hot so far, so I'm going to use this other guy instead of relying on the analytics. Like, saying Justin Bour coming off the bench. It says actually Roman Quinn has better statistics in analytics to get a hit on it, but I feel that Justin Bour's been hot lately. I'm going to let him go up there and see what he can do. And then, look what he does. He would probably get a home run or something like that. I'm just stating possibly what would have happened, but that's Gabe Kapler. He already said he's not changing a thing from what he does, so we're just either going to have to get used to that for another season because he's staying. So I really don't know what they're going on Gabe Kapler anymore, because I'm on his hate wagon now. I'm not a fan of him anymore. I was very optimistic of him when we were signing, and I was like, okay, let's get this guy a chance, because I really don't like hating on the manager that much. But when sometimes it's most of the time it's him costing us games from his decisions. I don't know what to say, dude. I just don't. Kapler needs to be better. He needs to learn how to manage. He can't micromanage that much. And that's what a lot of my family says. He micromanages and they hate that. You have that gut feeling. You can't rely on the book. You can't rely on the analytics that much. You gotta have that gut feeling. And then, okay, off the Gabe Kapler topics before I blow a gasket. Trade deadline and waiver deadline acquisitions. The Phillies acquired Asdrubal Cabrera. They acquired Wilson Ramos, Justin Bour, Jose Bautista, and Jesus Avalon. They were really high on Manny Machado in the deadline, but once it got closer to the deadline, the Phillies dropped out of that talk for Manny Machado because the Orioles were asking way too much out of the Phillies, and Clintack was afraid to go after Machado. He didn't want to give up someone like Sixto Sanchez for a Manny Machado. He really is high on Sixto Sanchez, and he's only in single-A ball. It's probably going to be a while before he's in the majors, and Manny Machado's 25. Like, I would have preferred the Phillies go after Machado. Like, if we got Machado, we possibly could have been in the playoffs, or even a wild card round. So, yeah, if the Phillies... Oh yeah, also, the Phillies didn't go after pitching at all, which clearly they needed a pitcher. Like, you had J. Happ and Cole Hamels on the market. They didn't try to go after anyone. Clintack was very trustful in his pitching staff, which eventually came back to bite him in the ass. I just questioned Clintack's decisions during that trade deadline. It was not the best decisions. So, overall, it was a good ride in the beginning of the season. I had fun watching the Phillies from the All-Star, for beginning of the season to the All-Star break, and that end of the All-Star break from July. But then once August kicked in, it just wasn't fun to watch anymore. How many times that team frustrated me and frustrated all the fans, I just gave up. I couldn't watch that team anymore. And I know all of you probably got tired of watching the Phillies losing, just beating themselves up, and just falling out of that playoff spot. It was heartbreaking to watch. And a lot of people are going to say, oh, the Phillies overachieved. They exceeded all expectations. It was actually a good season, but when you're in a first place for that long, you should try at least to make the playoffs and not collapse. You should be ready for October baseball. You should be ready for these big games coming up in September. The Phillies weren't ready for it, and they just collapsed. That's all I'm going to say. So, the Phillies are going to be high going into free agency. They have high hopes to acquire at least a big-time free agent, because the Phillies do have a lot of money to spend, and Clintack plans to spend that money on either Bryce Harper or Manny Machado. And I'm not really sure who I want over the other, But right now, I'm honestly going to decide going for Bryce Harper because I think it'll benefit. Because if you sign Machado, who does that replace in the infield? Because Machado can play third and he can play shortstop. Bryce Harper, he could play in the outfield, and then you can, like, say if you sign Bryce Harper, you play him in the outfield, and like with the Phillies going into the end of the season, they were playing Carlos Santana at third base over Michael Franco, and they were playing sometimes Hoskins at first, in which Hoskins is a natural first baseman. He should be playing first base the entire season, but no, they decided to test him in the outfield, and he had the worst statistical defensive season by an outfielder out of the entire MLB. It was not pretty. So, having Harper in the outfield, you can have right field of Bryce Harper, you can have a center field of Odubel Herrera, and then in left field you can have a platoon system of Roman Quinn and Nick Williams. I like that better than Hoskins in the outfield. I'd rather have that platoon system in left field. And then in the infield, you can have third base Carlos Santana if you want to continue using that test. Shortstop, you can have a platoon system between Kingery and Crawford. Second base, who knows if Cesar Hernandez is going to be on the team next season, but say if he is, he plays second base. And in first place, you play Hoskins. And if Cesar is not on the team next year, you can have either Crawford at shortstop and you can have Kingery at second. You can have those two play every day. Because even though Crawford and Kingery didn't have the best seasons, they're still young. They're still learning the MLB level. They still have a lot of potential. And honestly, if you put Machado on shortstop or third, that can take a spot away from a young guy. Even though if Cesar doesn't come back or the Phillies plan to keep him, I don't know how that's going to work with Machado in the infield. And also, I think the Phillies really need to sign Wilson Ramos because once he came to the team after his injury, he looked incredible. He was the best hitter on our team without a doubt. And then, even with Wilson Ramos, it looked like Jorge Alfaro's hitting game got better. I think Ramos can be a good mentor for Alfaro. Because Alfaro, he has a lot of potential to become a good... Even though he has a lot of his troubles defensively as a catcher, he does have a gun of an arm throwing second base. He just needs to learn to protect the ball once it bounces on the ground. That's his downside. If Wilson Ramos can teach him that, that'll be amazing. And also in free agency, I think the Phillies really need to go after a left-handed pitcher. It's evident that pitching was one of the downfalls of the Phillies, actually. And they had a ton of right-handed pitchers and barely any left-handers. So the Phillies need to go out and acquire a veteran arm left-hander starter. I'm not saying who that's going to be because I'm not sure what Clintack is interested in. So I'm just going to leave it at that. They need to go out and get a left-handed pitcher. And the Phillies desperately need a closer. This closer by committee situation did not work. That bullpen struggled through the rest of the season. Even though the beginning of the season they were really good going into the All-Star break, they were many of the reasons of the collapse of this team. That closer by committee situation does not work. You need a definite closer that can go in there and shut him down. Sir Anthony Dominguez, yeah, he showed potential to become a good closer, but he's too young. In the beginning of the season, yeah, he was really good, but then after the All-Star break, he wasn't the same once he was called up. He struggled. Teams were starting to read him better. This team needs someone that can just go in there and just shuts it down. That's basically it. Like, if you add some of these additions to the Phillies, they can be a much better team than they were this year. Well, obviously, anything would be better than an 80-82 record, but this team needs these kind of additions in order to become a competitive team to beat the Braves, and possibly even the Nationals, but who knows if the Nationals are going to be, if Harper resigns or not. Yeah, they have Juan Soto, but is he a definite replacement for Bryce Harper? Yeah, he has a lot of potential, but I don't know, losing Bryce Harper can hurt the Nationals by a lot. Max Scherzer can't carry that team forever. And it showed that this season. Even though he had a great season, the Nationals just struggled. And also, that was part of Bryce Harper's struggles in the beginning of the season, but that's a whole other story. Yeah, but all in all, I had fun watching this team some points. At the end of the season, it just wasn't fun to watch, where I just gave up on them. Hopefully next year is a different story, and we'll be all happy that the Phillies at least made the wild card. So, post in the comment section what you think about the Phillies season this year, and hopefully, what are your hopes for next season. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you next video.